Sean, we're back, and we've got a new season coming up, a new season of us doing this podcast. But first, of course, we have to get to the news. And like the rest of the sports world, the hockey world, we are as well just soaked in sadness and grief, disbelief about the untimely and tragic deaths last Thursday of Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. There really are no words, Sean, that can encapsulate how everybody is feeling, let alone the Gaudreau family. The loss is unimaginable, and the tributes to the Gaudreau family, to Johnny and Matthew, continue to pour in. It has just shocked me. It has rattled me as someone who has covered Johnny Gaudreau, knew him, and I would imagine, Sean, that you feel exactly the same.
Yeah, and we both pride ourselves on words, right? We both pride ourselves in our ability to explain things and to write about events that happen and capture the spirit of it, and words fail. There's no way to explain the depth of the grief that's being experienced. I think you've seen in the days since the news broke on Friday morning, with the unplanned tributes in Calgary and in Columbus and all over the hockey world. You've seen how much of an impact that Johnny Gaudreau's had and his brother Matthew, all the stuff that Matthew's done back at Gloucester Catholic where they both went to school and the impact that he's had. But clearly Johnny is a superstar in this league. And it's funny because he's so much bigger in hockey than he might be outside of hockey, if that makes any sense. I mean, his impact amongst the NHL fraternity is legendary. All you have to do, is look. This week, Cole Caulfield of the Montreal Canadiens decided to change his number because Johnny Hockey was his inspiration, right? And for all the smaller guys in this league, that's what Johnny Gaudreau was. He was a trailblazer, and he did it in such a personable way and really touched everybody that he met along his journey. And there's very few people in life that do that, right? People go through life and they just kind of go through, but Johnny legitimately touched every person that he met with his kindness and his personality and his zest for life. So it's just an unimaginable loss for so many people.
Yeah, and we, of course, in our world, know of them as hockey players, right? I mean, that's what we do. But and this is the thing that continues to rattle me and come back to me, is that they were sons. They were brothers. They have sisters. Johnny was a father. Matthew was about to be a father. Their husband. I mean, the loss here is to the hockey world is huge, right? I mean, because Johnny Gaudreau was an inspiration to many like Cole Caulfield, to many like him. And Matthew, an inspiration as well for everything, like you said, he's doing, in South Jersey and, where he played. And they were so close to the loss to this family, Sean. Like, that's the thing that I just can't even, like you said, we pride ourselves on words. It's very hard to express how you feel when you can't even imagine what they're feeling. And it will go on. And the sports world goes on, the hockey world goes on, and we will go on. We'll go on in this podcast a little later on. But I've had conversations with my kids, with my wife about this. People that, friends of mine come up, they're asking me, do I know him? I've shown many, many, many people a picture that Johnny Gaudreau and I took on the Great Wall of China almost 6 years ago. And we did it. He was with the Calgary Flames, and I was there on that trip covering the Flames and the Bruins. We went to the Great Wall of China, and the two of us took that picture, and we both said to ourselves, two Jersey guys on the Great Wall of China at the same time. And I look at that picture now, and it just makes me so sad.
Yeah, it's an incredible sadness, and but one of the things that almost, I don't want to say makes it okay, because nothing's going to make it okay, but the outpouring of support that the Gaudreaus have received since this happened, from the hockey world is unbelievable, right? We talked about the makeshift shrines that have appeared in Calgary and in Columbus, and the well wishes on social media and everything that's happened. When the hockey world unites and gets behind something, a family, a situation, whatever it is, it's empowering. And while you can't escape the overwhelming sadness, you try to always look for a positive. And for me, that's kind of what this has been, right? There's a whole community out there trying to help the Gaudreau family navigate what is just incomprehensible for a family to have to navigate. And the strength that they've drawn from that has certainly helped and will continue to help as they make this journey that is incomprehensible.
Yeah. And this is a great hockey family too. Just ask anybody down in South Jersey and Philadelphia area. This is a very well-known, great hockey family. And Nick Kotsonika, our columnist, is in Columbus now. He's going to be joining us shortly. He's there to cover the vigil tonight that the Blue Jackets are hosting at Nationwide Arena. There's another one in Calgary as well at the Saddle Dome. In Columbus, they're going to do a 13-minute and 21-second silent remembrance. 13 for Johnny Gaudreau's number. 21 was Matthew Gaudreau's number at Boston College. But before we get to Nick, let's go back with the NHL Network and take a look back at Johnny Gaudreau's life and career in the NHL.
Born in Salem, New Jersey, Johnny Gaudreau was drafted by the Calgary Flames in the 4th round of the 2011 NHL entry draft. Before he headed to Alberta, Gaudreau played 3 seasons at Boston College, winning the national championship in 2012 and the Hobey Baker Award as the top player in college hockey in 2014. He was an instant star when he arrived in Calgary, scoring in his first NHL game.
Slams one towards the goal, tipped in by Johnny Gaudreau. His first NHL game, he's got his first NHL goal, and Calgary's on the board.
He played 9 seasons in Western Canada, averaging more than a point a game, and his 609 points are the 5th most in franchise history. He flexed his star power in the 2021-22 season, notching a career high in goals and assists, while leading the league in plus-minus at plus 64.
Gaudreau, he's got a break, he deeks, he shoots, he scores!
His 115 points were tied for 2nd in the league, only 8 points behind the Art Ross Trophy winner, Connor McDavid. He was also named a first-team All-Star and finished 4th in the Hart Memorial Trophy voting. In the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs that year, Gaudreau scored one of the most memorable goals in team history.
Gaudreau scores! Johnny Gaudreau, the hero in overtime in Game 7.
A Game 7 overtime winner against the Dallas Stars that pushed Calgary into the 2nd round for the first time since 2015. Afterwards, he described the goal saying, quote, "You dream about stuff like that." That offseason, he surprised the hockey world by signing a 7-year, $68.25 million deal with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
He's got room. Johnny Gaudreau goals. Oh, what a play by Johnny Gaudreau.
In his 2 seasons in Ohio, he tallied 33 goals and 134 points in 161 games. The 2016-2017 Lady Byng Memorial Trophy winner made 7 All-Star appearances during his 11-season career. Johnny Hockey will be remembered not just for his on-ice skills, but for his joyful personality and off-ice charitable efforts that helped causes in Central Ohio and his native New Jersey. Johnny Gaudreau was just 31 years old.
Nick Kotsonika joins us now, and he is in Columbus for coverage tonight, Wednesday, the vigil for Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. And listen, your reaction, I'm sure, is the same as the rest of us, the rest of the hockey world, really the rest of the sports world. With the Gaudreau stuff, when it happened the day after, you wrote a column about what Johnny Gaudreau meant to hockey. I wonder if you could just dive into that a little bit, just piece it together in your mind, what you wrote about, and just touch on what Johnny Gaudreau meant to hockey.
Well, first and foremost, my heart breaks for his family. I think like everyone else, I'm the father of 2 sons. So it's unimaginable for that family to lose, 2 sons on the same day. What's most important is family. They were brothers, right? their sons, fathers, husbands. That's what I think of first. As NHL.com, we're going to write about his, impact on hockey and on the league. When I think of Johnny Gaudreau, he's always going to be Johnny Hockey, right? Which is one of the great nicknames in the sport. And he encapsulates what we love about hockey, right? Like just the joy with which he played, the skill and the spirit that he had. I think about him as a player, and you cannot get past the fact that he was a little guy who played big. Every time I talk to Johnny Gaudreau, he's a great guy to talk to. Always available, just real personable guy. But you looked at him and you're like, this guy plays in the NHL, let alone is a star. I mean, he was so small, so skinny. It was hard to believe that he could excel on the ice, but he did. And, part of the column, you're trying to put things in perspective. When he was drafted, he was 5'6", 137 pounds. He's smaller than my 17-year-old boy right now, who's small, right? There were 211 players taken that year. He was tied for the shortest. He was the lightest by 13 pounds, right? And he had no business making the league at that size, right? Even last season, he's 5'9", 163, right? There were 1,022 players who appeared in the league last season. Only 15 were shorter, only 5 were lighter. But this guy was a superstar. And when you start to look at what he accomplished, his whole career, he won a championship in the USHL. He won a championship in college hockey. He won the Hobey Baker Award. He won World Juniors. And then you look at his NHL numbers. I think when you come to the very, end, obviously he was 5th in Flames history in assist and points. And over the period that really encapsulated his career from 2014 to 24, he was 7th in assists and 9th in points in the league. I mean, that's a great player. So if we're just looking at the player, he was one of the best. But I want to bring it back to family, right? He played one more year at Boston College than maybe he should have. And a big part of that was to play with his brother, Matthew, who also, perished in the accident. When you look at why did he come to Columbus, a lot of it was family, right? He wanted to be closer to his family. He wanted to raise his kids in the United States. He wanted to be an hour flight from the Philly area, for the grandparents, right? So it's heartbreaking. He was a great player. The little guy is a huge loss.
Sadly, these events have happened before, and they'll probably happen again. And there's been vigils in the past, and you're at this one today in Columbus. When you're a part of this communal gathering, what's the purpose almost where everybody's kind of allowed to express their sadness and their memories?
Well, I think, most of the people who are going to come to the vigil didn't know John, right? Didn't know Johnny Gaudreau. But he was still a part of their life, right? And they're fans of hockey, they're fans of Johnny Gaudreau, they're fans of the Blue Jackets or the Flames. And when you see someone lose his life at 31 years old, his brother lose his life at 29 years old, at the peak, of their athletic lives, of their life, right? I think it affects everybody differently, and we can all relate to that on some level. I think we've all lost someone in our lives, but when you lose someone young, an athlete dying young, it does hit differently, and it reminds you of just how fragile all this is. I said to my son, do you think Johnny Gaudreau's parents care that he was a superstar hockey player right now? Or his brother was a, college player, pro player? Like, no, they love their son, right? They miss their sons. So I think it's different for everybody, but I think, the hockey world also, comes together, unfortunately, or fortunately at times like this. So, even if you didn't know Johnny Gaudreau, you knew him as a player, you knew his public persona. And I think on some level, personally, it affects you, in different ways.
Very well said. Very well written. Continue to follow Nick's coverage of the vigil in Columbus, where he is at as we speak to him right now. Listen, there's no good way to transition off of this, but the sports world, the hockey world, it goes on, and there's a lot going on. in the National Hockey League, and you've written about that too. And so let's get a little bit of there. Leon Draisaitl, Edmonton Oilers. The big news from Tuesday, signs the big deal, 8-year deal, $112 million, $14 million salary cap hit for Leon Draisaitl. Says he wants to be an Oiler for life. And when I heard those words, Nick, and I read your story, the one thing I thought about was a superstar in Edmonton wants to be an Oiler for life, and he might actually get that chance. Gretzky didn't get that chance. Messier didn't get that chance, but it looks like Leon Draisaitl wants it, and we'll see if he gets it, but he's set up to get it now.
It is difficult to transition, and it wouldn't surprise me if this were already done last week and the announcement came later because of the Gaudreau situation. I think the entire league, and especially the Columbus Blue Jackets, are going to have a hard time transitioning. But you're right, and this is huge news for the Edmonton Oilers, right? To get this done now before training camp, right? They avoid all those questions and all that distraction that would have built up during the year, had Leon gone unsigned. Two, it's Leon, he could have gone on the open market and tried to get more than $14 million a year. He could have tried to get out of Connor McDavid's shadow. He didn't, right? He made a commitment. He wants to be an Oiler. I think all those things have to be music to the ears of Oilers fans. You also hope, if you're an Oilers fan, Leon's talking to Connor all the time, right? They're talking about the situation. So you're hoping that Leon knows how Connor feels, right? And is confident that Connor is going to stay. And you're hoping that now that the Oilers have Leon locked up, that Connor wants to stay, right? So not only do you get Leon possibly for the rest of his career, but you're hoping that this increases the chances that you're going to lock down Connor too. The challenge is obvious, and it's the same that it's always been. Can you surround those guys with enough of a supporting cast under the cap to win the Stanley Cup? Well, they came darn close last season, right? So it can be done. It's going to be a challenge, but boy, is that a good problem to have. So I think this is great news for the Edmonton Oilers.
Is there a difference, Nick, in Edmonton and Toronto? I mean, for years we've talked about Toronto and their core four and not being able to get over the top. And now you're going to have a core four in Edmonton that's going to eat up a huge part of the cap, right? You talked about what McDavid's going to get. Bouchard's got to be in the $9-10 million range when he comes up. Nurse is at 9.5. That's a pretty big chunk of change for one team.
For sure. It's similar. I didn't mention Bouchard, but he's going to be a problem. The Nurse contract, you can argue, is already a problem. But this is life under the cap, right? It can be done. Stan Bowman did it to different degrees in Chicago, where you had a core, and you have to recycle around that core. And if you look at those 3 championships in Chicago, they turned over that supporting cast dramatically from championship to championship. It's hard to draw an exact parallel, but Taves and Kane, were the 2 big ones in Chicago, and then there were other parts of the core. And then you had to find a supporting cast, and that's going to be Stan's, challenge in Edmonton.
It makes this year so important for the Oilers. Not that it wasn't already, getting to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, but it's like you look at it and say, now they had to win this year. Get it done before this cap hit starts, before McDavid's contract comes up, right? I mean, before Bouchard. Get it done within this window. The cap's gone up a little bit, but Draisaitl's deal doesn't kick in until next year. So it's the same. To me, this is a huge. We knew it was going to be. So this is not an overstatement, but it's essential almost that they win this year.
To back up, the point I should have made to Sean's question is the big difference between Edmonton and Toronto is Edmonton is won in the playoffs. They've got to the conference final. What was it? Three seasons ago now, we're calling it. They got to the Stanley Cup final, 1 win away last season. So that's the biggest difference with Toronto. But also, you're right. I mean, ideally, you want to take advantage of this part of the window. I think that loss really hurts to come so close and to not win. But at the end of the day, it's not a perfect world, and you're trying to extend that window as long as you possibly can. So sure, you want to take advantage of it now, but you want to do it every year, and you want as many years as you can possibly have. So now at least they know they've got 9 years now with Leon Draisaitl. They've got at least 2 if they want with Connor McDavid, and hopefully they extend him, and they get more.
Yeah, it may be essential this year, but it's also going to be difficult. I know the Panthers did it this past year to lose the championship and come back, but it's one of the biggest rarities in the NHL. So, it's certainly going to have to be a huge task for Edmonton to recover from, as you said, Nick, a really emotional gut punch. What do you think the biggest thing is for them to change what's going to happen this year? What has to be different?
That I hadn't thought about that. I'd like to think about it more. I mean, my knee jerk is just to play better defensively. But if you look at them under Knoblauch, right? Well, after Knoblauch took over from whatever the date was or shortly afterward, they were one of the best teams in the league last year, right? And then they got through the gauntlet in the Western Conference. And maybe if they don't get goalied early in the final, like they won the cup, right? So maybe it's not a ton. Maybe some depth. They lost some depth pieces. Maybe they've got to worry about their depth. But to me, it's get back to playing the way they were when they were playing well last year under Knoblauch. Maybe tighten up a little bit defensively. Those are the knee-jerk things that I think of. But, I mean, this is a darn good team. And, for inspiration, look simply at the Florida Panthers. I mean, they came off a loss in the final. It wasn't the same type of loss. But they were beaten up, and everybody kind of thought, including me, that they were going to struggle the beginning of last season, partly because of injuries. And they didn't, right? And they had a great season. They came back and won the cup. So if I'm the Oilers, I'm just trying to use that as fuel, and come back and have a great season and take another shot at it.
Just don't fall behind 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final.
Well, for sure. But again, if not for Bobrovsky, maybe that beginning of that series might have gone differently, and they're the Cup champions. So, coulda, shoulda, but if you're the Oilers, you got to look at it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Lesson learned. You got to get back there. And Sean is right. It is a Herculean task to get back there after you lose it. One other thing I wanted to touch on with you, Nick, before we let you go, Tomas Hertl. You spoke with him at the European Player Media Tour, which you were lucky enough to get to in Prague. I'm going to Prague later this month, by the way, for the Global Series, so excited. I need some recommendations. Hertl, very interesting guy. He's healthy now. His first camp with Vegas, he really never found a spot in Vegas last year. It was too quick, right? I mean, it just didn't quite work out at that point, but I think that was to be expected. The difference with Vegas now, no Marchessault, they've lost some big pieces, right? But are they still, now with Hertl a healthy guy and in their lineup and in camp, are they still, in your mind, a legitimate Stanley Cup contender the way we've expected Vegas to be?
Yes. And I love Jonathan Marchessault, and I think he's a huge loss. And you lose Stevenson. I mean, I think they lost 7 pieces from their championship team. But what I will say is they got ahead of it, right? I think they could see it coming. They got Hertl and they got Noah Hanifin at the deadline. Those are their big additions, right? And that offsets some of the subtractions that were made. You look at this team, they feel very strong in goal with Adin Hill. They think Samsonov will be a good backup. They're great on defense. They've got an outstanding defense. And look at them down the middle. You've got Eichel, Hertl, and Karlsson. That's not bad, right? So they're pretty strong in the areas where you want to build your team. Now, they've got a lot of competition on the wing, and that's the big X factor, right? Who's going to step up on the wing? But I think they feel they can find some diamonds in the rough or have some young players come up and produce on the wing. Mark Stone is healthy from what I hear. Unlike last season when he's coming off a back injury, this time he's coming off a freak injury, which isn't going to linger, right? And if you look at last season, the first 56 games, he led them in scoring. He was great. So I think they feel good about him. Now we get to Hertl. We were all shocked when they got him at the deadline, right? But again, I think they were thinking ahead. He was coming off a knee. I think he played 6 games down the stretch and 7 in the playoffs. So you're jumping back in after knee surgery. You're joining a new team for the first time. He had a rotating, cast of wingers. Stone wasn't himself when he came back. So there were a lot of things that were, not ideal. Well, now he's healthy. Stone's healthy. The advantage to joining Vegas at the end of last year is you got he's got his house. He got to know everybody in the team. He got to know the coaches. He got to know the system. So now he's had a full summer of training. He'll have a full training camp. Should be 100% from the get-go. Kelly McCrimmon, the GM, told me, it's not exact parallel, but it's a lot like Jack Eichel, right? When they acquired Jack Eichel, he had the neck surgery. He had to recover. He joined the team. Wasn't ideal. But when he came back the next year, he was ready to go, and they won the Stanley Cup. So I do think this team is still a contender, and I know that they'll have as high expectations as they always do.
Nick on the Vegas bandwagon. I'm shocked. I am
I know.
shocked.
Big surprise. And you want recommendations in Prague there, Dan? I was just there. Beer. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, there it is. Right there.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We know you have a busy day. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we look forward to what you have coming out of Columbus today.
Thanks, boys. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Looking forward to the season.
We thank Nick for joining us and continue to follow his coverage from Columbus, again, of the vigil for Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Gaudreau tonight, which is Wednesday nights. Sean, we did it with Nick, so we got to do it now, too. The hockey world moves on. There's a bunch of restricted free agents out, still unsigned. They remain restricted free agents as camps are now 2 weeks away from opening, and I think the biggest one is Jeremy Swayman. And I touched on this a little bit in my mailbag this week. It's up on NHL.com now. I can't find a comparable. I don't know of a comparable right now for Jeremy Swayman because it's this unique. He has obviously become one of the top goalies in the National Hockey League. He had a .256 goals against. He had a .916 save percentage in 44 games. He's been in the playoffs. He's played in the playoffs. He's played well. He had a .933 save percentage in 12 playoff games this year. He's an RFA. But he's never been a unquestioned number one goalie because Linus Ullmark was there. And Linus Ullmark won the Vezina Trophy when Jeremy Swayman was there. And now he is that unquestioned number one goalie, and he wants to get paid like it. Yeah, I can't find a contract comparable for him. It's a unique situation. And I'm not saying he's not worth the money. He's worth what he's going to get paid because he is a number one goalie. But to me, it's a stranger one, and maybe that's what could be holding things up a little bit.
Oh, for sure, it's what's holding things up, and I'm surprised that this didn't get done before the Ullmark move. Right, that was when the Bruins had all the leverage, and maybe that was part of it too. Right, that maybe Swayman didn't want to do a tandem anymore. He wanted his time in the crease. I don't know that part of it, but they kind of when they sent Ullmark out the door, they also sent all their leverage out the door because there's no other option now, right? You got to have him in camp. He's going to be in camp. He's already practicing in Boston at the captain's practices. So I think that's kind of a signal that things are going to get done. Normally, if it's contentious, the player won't show up. Because that's another piece of leverage. So I think it's going to get done. I think it's going to be at a big number. But I think, when you look at the checklist of what the Bruins wanted to see from Swayman in order to pay him, he's hit all of it. Right? You said he's never been a number one. He was a number one in the playoffs when it's the most important time. He played extremely well. He's played well in big games. He's handled a workload, right? When you think about the playoffs and playing every other day, he handled that workload. He won a Game 7. He's done everything that he needed to do to prove that he's worth a starting goaltender's money and a young starting goaltender, one that you probably want to lock up for a long time. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be a big headache for the Bruins as they try and figure this out. And then as soon as they figure this out, they have another one hanging over their heads. And their captain, Brad Marchand, who said yesterday at captain's practice that he has no interest in talking about his contract status and that it'll all work out and that he has the utmost respect for the Bruins and that things will work out. And you can say that a year out because you have a lot of time to figure it out, but things are not easy for the Bruins front office at the moment.
No, absolutely not. Swayman is such a key for them. He's there. He's expressed optimism. They've expressed optimism. Cam Neely, I think, went on local radio in Boston a couple of weeks ago and was just like, this is going to get done. It's just, this league, we work under deadlines, right? You and I work under deadlines all the time. And whether it's free agency or the trade deadline or whatever it might be, deadlines make deals. And it's going to make a deal in this case, too. But a couple other ones. You mentioned Marchand. I want to get to Marchand after we talk about these RFAs that are still there, because Marchand's another interesting one. 3 surgeries this offseason, by the way. Mo Seider and Lucas Raymond in Detroit. Both of those guys, RFAs. I can't find comps for them. Seider, I think it's a comp like an Owen Power. 7-year deal, $58.45 million. If he wants to be a Detroit Red Wing for a long time, he's a number 1 defenseman. It's a similar type of deal, I think. Lucas Raymond could be the Seth Jarvis deal. Potentially. And Seth Jarvis's deal is very interesting with deferred money. 8-year deal, $63.2 million. There's deferred money to lower the cap hit a little bit. And Sean, we were talking about it before we started recording the podcast. His value to the Carolina Hurricanes is huge. So Seider and Raymond I expect to get done, but those are the comps. But if we flipped it to Jarvis, who's now not an RFA anymore, he's signed, I mean, he's got to be a big-time scorer for this team.
Yeah, he does. And look, am I surprised that Eric Tulsky is the one that kind of pulled the rabbit out of the hat when it comes to innovative ways of thinking about contracts and salary cap? And not at all. I mean, that's part of the reason he was brought in, right? And I think this is a contract that's going to be studied by a lot of GMs over the next little while to maybe solve some of their cap problems. And Marty Smith spoke today. The NHLPA is having their rookie showcase in Virginia, and Tom Galiti and Adam Kimmelman from our group are there. And he said it off the bat, there's nothing there that really concerns him, but they're going to look at it some more. But I'm sure everybody had their say in it. Again, it's just Eric Tulsky, the new GM there, finding a creative way to spread out his salary cap, right? And maybe bring in more players, because they have to fill a lot of holes. They lost a lot, and some of it's going to be internally, right? They have some players who, are going to come up and get more time, and some are going to have to take a bigger role. And Seth Jarvis is one of those. And I'll tell you one thing, I covered him a lot during the playoffs last year through 2 rounds, and then the year before that through 3 rounds. This kid's legit. He is a tough player who can score, who will do anything for the team. You think about the injuries he was playing through this year, a shoulder injury, a finger injury, and he was still one of the most important players on their team in the playoffs. I love his game. I love his personality. No moment's too big for him. He keeps that room loose. He is going to be a cornerstone for the next 7 years.
Listen, not only that, he's fun. And I don't say that lightly. Like, this guy brings joy to the ice. He brings joy to that room. He's funny. He's enjoyable to be around. The players like him. He's got chemistry with Sebastian Aho. That all factors into his value to that team. No question about it.
He has chemistry with all the Finns. He's an honorary Finn.
He is.
And you have to be special to get welcomed into the Finnish fraternity. I've been going to Finland for years. They still haven't welcomed me in yet.
Listen, he is a big-time player for them, has to be. The contract, I think, is a comparable for Lucas Raymond. But it's listen, the deferred money part of it, they never announced the exact amount of deferred money. The player has to be willing to do that. It's been, as far as I know, it's been allowed in the collective bargaining agreement since it's been signed, since this collective bargaining agreement has been in place, but nobody's done it right until now, the Carolina Hurricanes. And that might be something also here with guys like Raymond and Seider and some others, Dawson Mercer with the New Jersey Devils, Thomas Harley with the Dallas Stars, Cole Perfetti with Winnipeg. These teams could be studying that as a way of can we do this? Is the player going to be willing to do this? The player has to be willing to defer money to do this. It helps out the team. He still gets his money, but it just carries over to another year. And Jarvis is maybe a little bit of a guinea pig for that. But also, I think, too, when I mentioned Harley and Mercer, Seider and Raymond, and I touched on this in the mailbag, too. To me, Seider, Raymond, it's almost like maybe the Dallas Stars and the New Jersey Devils are waiting for Seider and Raymond to sign to get the comps for Harley and Mercer.
Yeah, I think there's some of that, and you're always curious where guys are going to come in, and it's somewhat of a gamble, right? If those numbers come in higher than you hoped, now you're backed up against the wall because the player's going to say, well, I'm equal to that guy, and look what he made. So, it's a little bit of poker, I think, that you're playing. But I wonder if Seth Jarvis called up Bobby Bonilla to find out about the deferred money.
Hey, Mets are still paying him every July 4th. It's Bobby Bo Day. Is it July 1st or July 4th? Either way, whatever. It's
so now
July.
there's going to be Seth Jarvis Day.
No, it's only 1 year deferred money. Come on. Bobby Bonilla's getting paid for like 100 years. It's great.
You know what? And it was smart. It was smart business, right? I think Bruce Sutter was one of the first ones to do it, and it's a little bit more under the radar, but it set him up for life.
It did. It set Bobby Bonilla up for life. He gets, I think, $1.3 million, every year for the next.
It's like winning the lottery.
Years. Yeah. And listen, smart business, to go back, Eric Tulsky is a smart guy. He's doing smart business. This is how you GM now in the National Hockey League. You have to. The cap is everything. The cap runs it all. And if you can find ways, they're not loopholes in the CBA. They're allowed in the CBA. If you find ways through legal action in the collective bargaining agreement to help your salary cap situation, it will in turn help your team. Not like Eric Tulsky has done that. We've seen other general managers find ways. Julian Brisebois comes to mind within the legal ways of the collective bargaining agreement to maximize salary cap and maximize salary cap relief too. It's essential to being a general manager, and it's also why you see there's like 3 assistant general managers per team, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot of people to run this cap system.
Takes a village, Dan.
Takes a village. Listen, we got Patrik Laine skating in Montreal too. And this, obviously, the news with the Columbus Blue Jackets is the Johnny Gaudreau news, but prior to the tragic news with Johnny Gaudreau, Patrik Laine was traded to Montreal. Fresh start for him. He wanted a trade. It seemed to me that the Blue Jackets were welcoming that as well to get him a fresh start. He's out of the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. He's skating in Montreal. Sean, if Patrik Laine is healthy, if he's feeling good, he can be a 40 or 50 goal scorer in this league. Patrik Laine's problem has always been that when things don't go well for him, his confidence gets shot. When he's been healthy, his confidence gets shot if the puck's not going in. He's a guy who's driven on goals. He needs to score to feel good. If he can find a way to do that, Montreal gets a steal here. But to me, it's still a wild card.
It is a wild card, but I think Marty St. Louis is the perfect coach for him, right? He's a player who's gone through some of the same things and is positive and preaches confidence, right? He allows his players to be confident by allowing them to do what they're best at. Nobody's asking Patrik Laine to come to Montreal and be a Selke forward, right? He's got to play the game the way they play it, but he's going to have the freedom to do the things that he needs to do. And personally, I'm a huge Patrik Laine fan. I hope he's in a better place. I hope his time away helped him. From all the comments he's made since he's come back, it appears that it has. One of my lasting memories, there's 2 with Patrik Laine, right, was his draft year, how confident he was. He wanted to be the number 1 pick. He didn't understand why he couldn't be the number 1 pick. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It didn't rub me the wrong way. Like, you want a guy to want that. And then, 2 years ago, I went to Finland with Patrik Laine back to his hometown, and to see him in that environment and to see what a superstar he is back home, and for him to enjoy those accolades and to be able to have that time, and you just looked at him and it reminded you of who he was and who he could be, and it was all encapsulated in that 1 week, because then the games came and the Finnish players from Colorado had a much better performance than Laine, and it started to turn as that weekend went on, right? Like he got frustrated that he couldn't do as much, and you could almost see it. So you're right, that's where it is. It's in a confidence thing, and I think if anybody can change that a little bit it might be Marty St. Louis, because he's going to be really the first guy who's experienced a lot of the same things that Patrick Laine's gone through in this game.
And look, the other thing about Laine now is you can't say the pressure is off, because he's still a guy who's known as a terrific goal scorer. But
he's in Montreal, Dan.
He's in Montreal. But you're talking about a guy who this wasn't a blockbuster trade. This was for a second round pick and Jordan Harris. This was not a huge. They didn't give a ton, the Canadiens, to get Laine. They want to get Laine and get the very best out of Patrick Laine, and this could be an absolute steal for them. And part of the way this becomes a steal for the Montreal Canadiens, and where Laine can feel good and really be the goal scorer he can be, Cole Caulfield has to be the goal scorer he can be too. Because those are the two top scoring guys right now on the Canadiens, and I don't think there's really a question. Nick Suzuki's the captain, and he's the playmaker, distributor, all-around player. But Caulfield and Laine, and if one of them doesn't produce, it's going to be harder for the other guy, because he's going to become easier to mark, right? He's going to become easier to defend, because they're just going to throw everything on him. Caulfield scored 28 goals last year. He, to me, can be an easy 40 or 50 goal scorer. The guy has just got a nose for it. It's possible that maybe this is pie in the sky, but it's possible the Canadiens have two 40-goal scorers on their roster right now in Cole Caulfield and Laine. And if they do, Marty St. Louis might be the Jack Adams Award winner.
Yeah, and it's a young team that's growing up, right? And Laine almost becomes a veteran on this team, right? At a younger age. You think about Slavkovsky and the jump that he took last year, and some of the young guys on the defense, and Caulfield's still young. Suzuki is still young, my God.
Yeah,
and he's the captain. So, I think this is kind of the perfect fit for Laine. And I think he does need pressure in a weird way to succeed, right? He's a creature of confidence, but I also think that he sees pressure as a gift, right? It's something that means you're counted on, and then when he can't deliver on that, it becomes difficult for him. But if he wasn't counted on for anything, I think that would be even harder for him. He uses it as motivation. So again, I really like where he's at in Montreal, and what they gave up. It is such a low-risk, high-reward move that there's almost no downside to it.
Yeah, it shows you the value that the Blue Jackets were working with here with Patrick Laine, with everything that he's gone through, right? So yeah, to me it's a great deal for the Canadiens, and it's probably the best deal that the Blue Jackets could get for him, and maybe that second-round pick or Jordan Harris turns into something big for them, and that's fine. But it wasn't working with Laine in Columbus, and there's a great opportunity for him there in Montreal. And the Canadiens are a team to me, Sean, and I know that since Jeff Gorton took over there and Ken Hughes is the GM, they've been willing to go slow. Marty St. Louis go slow. You got to take a step at some point, and this is a season to take a step. And Laine should, in theory, help them take a step. But acquiring Laine shows me that the Canadiens the desire is to take that step. So we'll see where it goes. Marchand, brought him up before you brought him up. He's going into the last year of an 8-year contract, 3 surgeries this summer, and he hopes to be ready for training camp. He had a torn tendon in his elbow, a groin issue with a sports hernia, and in his abdominal area with a sports hernia. He's 36 years old, Sean. I still believe in Brad Marchand, though. I think he'll be there on day one. I think he'll be there in game one, and I think he's going to be an elite player for the Boston Bruins.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, we're not talking about career-altering surgeries, right? I don't ever want to denigrate any time you have to go under the knife, because I have no interest in it. But there's different degrees of surgery, and none of these should hamper his career. And he's already shown how tough he can be in playing through all of these things and other things as he's gone along in his career. I expect him to drive that team, and anybody who counts out the Bruins or Brad Marchand does so at their own peril. I think we've seen that all along. But one of the things that really strikes me about the Bruins, and I was thinking about this week, Emily was at practice yesterday, captain's practice, and you look at their defense now, there's nobody under 6'1".
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, their defense is like the Vegas defense of the championship years. They're just these big, strong guys who are going to keep the front of the net clear, and in a system that already limits goals, I think they have a chance to really be competitive again. Like, I don't see the bottom falling out at all. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts. When you look at divisions and you look at the playoffs and who's going to come and take from them, there's nobody.
Well, I mean, no, they're still a contender, no question about it. And when you talk about the defense and the size of their defense, the guy who's 6'1" is Charlie McAvoy, who's probably their best defenseman, right? So, I mean, that tells you a lot. I mean, Carlo, Lindholm, Zadorov, these are big boys. And Vegas, I think for a long time, Sean, we knew you needed size on the back end, right? Teams were winning, finding ways with maybe a guy or two who was a smallish defenseman but had, elite skill or whatever it might be, but, great skating. But you need size. Vegas was the team a couple of years ago that showed us exactly that again, maybe reminded us of that again. Florida wasn't small on the back end, and neither was Edmonton last year, right? So you need that size. That's Bruins hockey, though. Right? I mean, you know it. That size, a bit of snarl on the back end, mean. That's the defense that they have to have. The best guy on that defense is the 6'1" guy who skates the best, and it's Charlie McAvoy. But the rest of those guys,
who is no shrinking violet, by the way,
no shrinking violet. But the rest of those guys, good luck getting near the front of the net against the Boston Bruins. Good luck. And by the way, the guy who's going to be defending it, we think, is going to be one of the best goalies in the league in Jeremy Swayman. And they're a very well-coached team. They can score. They have a center now that they believe in more than for the role he's going to play in Elias Lindholm. Look out for Boston. No question about it.
Yeah, no, I don't see them taking a step back at all. Like, they are who they are, and they're going to be that way for a long time because that's the way they draft, that's the way they develop, and they have no qualms about it.
No doubt. And Marchand, by the way, it's interesting too. 36 years old, entering the last year of an 8-year deal, wants to play until he's 40. You think he goes 1-year deals from here on out? Or do you think he goes the 3-year deal, the 2-year? What do you think with Marchand? I can see the 1 year happening, but he's the captain, so maybe maybe the Bruins are just like, you know what, we're going to give you the 3-year deal.
Yeah, and I think as a player, that's what you'd want, right? If you're married to this team and you want to finish with this team and you have a date you want to play to, sign the contract to that date. There's nothing to be gained by doing single years. The number's going to go down every year, right? Unless somehow you exceed expectations, and then you get to the end and maybe it's not there and you still want to play, and then you have to do the Marty Brodeur. Right? You have to do those weird, I'm going to play 1 year somewhere else because I want to finish at this year. I want to chase this record. I want to do this. And there's a year that people want to forget about but can't.
He's not the only one, by the way, in the pending UFA category that we're looking for extensions. Igor Shesterkin, Sidney Crosby, Mitch Marner, some pretty significant names. And I do wonder, with training camp set to open 2 weeks from today, we're talking Wednesday, if something along the lines of those guys gets accomplished here before camp, during camp, sometime before the season, so the questions go away.
Well, I got to tell you, the Crosby one shocks me.
Just get it done.
I thought the Crosby one would be done by now. I thought it'd be done in August. I thought they would do it on August 7th.
I did too. What are you messing around with? Get this done.
Yeah, I don't know what the hang up is. I don't know which side it's coming from. But I'm shocked that this one isn't done. Hopefully we're both lucky enough we're going to Player Media Tour next week in Vegas. And Sidney Crosby's supposed to be there. Maybe the deal's done by then, or we get it right from the horse's mouth when we're in Vegas. But for me, that's always the start of the season, right? We get the Player Media Tour. There's going to be 30 plus of the best players in the league there, one pretty much from every team, and that's when you start to do the storylines and you start to get the news flowing. And you start thinking about being back on the ice, and right from there you go into rookie camps, rookie tournaments. I'm going to L.A. for the big one, the 8-7 team one. Utah's first game, Celebrini's first game. It's going to be awesome, right? But we're getting at that point now where hockey's happening, and you expect all of these deals to get done in short order.
Sidney Crosby's got to get done. I mean, do it. Get it done. Iron out that business and figure it out. Get it done. And I feel the same way about Shesterkin too, although that's a little bit different. It's a bigger number. He also probably didn't spend the summer, in North America, so there's, a little bit more of challenges there. So interesting, but it was a good plug for Player Media Tour. We'll be there next week in Las Vegas. We're doing a lot of interviews for this podcast that we'll have for you through the course of the preseason and probably, as we've done in the past, into the regular season as well, Sean. I mean, I agree with you. That's the start of the season for us. That's where we get going. We wanted to get one out here, tease it a little bit, get Nick on from Columbus. And then next week, we are hearing storylines. We are next week right now when we're in Las Vegas next Monday. On Monday, we're going to be very close, very, very close. And when we're leaving Las Vegas, we will be 1 week away from training camps opening. It feels like the Florida Panthers just lifted the cup, but here we go again.
And you'll be 2.5 weeks from takeoff to Munich?
That's right. I'm 20 days right now from takeoff to Munich for the NHL Global Series with the Buffalo Sabres. They're going to be playing in Munich against Red Bull and then going over to Prague to play the New Jersey Devils to open the season, October 4th and 5th in the Global Series Czechia. And I'm waiting for Nick to give me his recommendations. I have none for Munich right now.
Don't listen to Nick. I got better recommendations. I've been to Prague 3 times, buddy.
So I've been there twice. I got some spots I know of. Munich, I've never been to Munich, and going to be there with the Sabres. And interestingly enough, J.J. Peterka from the Buffalo Sabres will be there, so I'm hoping to get some time with him in his hometown of Munich. But that, Sean, that's not for another 20 days. We still got Player Media Tour next week. Lots to do. I'm glad we were able to get a podcast out, and next week we're going to be doing a lot of interviews for this podcast. So here we go again. We're raring to go for another season.
Can't wait. We'll see you in Vegas.